Alright, yesterday, did we do these three?
Yes.
Okay, so we saw that to find the y-intercept from the table is sometimes pretty easy because the y-intercept is when x equals 0. Because think about it, to have a point sitting directly on the y-axis means that it did not move left or right. Had it, it wouldn't be sitting on the y-axis, right? So anytime you have an x value of 0, that y value is your y-intercept. So like x is 0, y is 3, that's your y-intercept. X is 0, y is negative 1, that's your y-intercept. And that's because when x equals 0, the point will be sitting on the y-axis. And it'll depend on what the y value is, where it is. Okay, now, what should we do though if we don't see 0 in the table? Like all three of these tables had 0 for x. But down here, we don't have a 0 for the x. First, we want to find the slope. How do you find the slope given a table? You what? Right, you find the slope. Okay? So to find the slope, you have to use the slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Well, to use that formula, you obviously need two different x values and two different y values. Well, I have 5 different x values and 5 different y values, so you get to choose the two you want. Which ones would you like to use? Okay, so if we're going to use these bottom 2 points, this is my first x value, this is my first y value. This is my second x value, and this is my second y value. See how now I've given each of those 4 numbers a unique name, and I know where to plug them in the formula? So what goes in the y2 place? Minus, over, right. 27 minus 23 is 4. 5 minus 4 is 1. So the slope is 4. So we know part of the equation now. We know mx. We still do not know b though because it wasn't visible in the table. We just know the m is 4. This is how you now find the b. So I want you to stop writing and pay attention. I'll give you time to copy. Okay. So we know our ultimate goal here is to write the equation in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. We just found out m is 4. We do not know b. That's what we want to find out. I'm going to just plug in an x and a y of my choosing and solve for b. So it doesn't even have to be the 2 you used for slope. It can be any of these x's and y's. Which one do you want to use? Okay, so if we use 111, 1 is the x, so it will go under x. And those are touching, so you multiply the 4 and 1. And then 11 is the y value of that point, so it goes in the place of y. So now I have 11 equals 4 times 1, which is 4, plus b. And now to solve for b, what do I do? Subtract 4 on both sides, so b equals 11 minus 4, which is 7. So now that I know the m and the b, I know the entire equation is y equals 4x plus 7. Now, some of you may be thinking, keep watching for a second, I'll give you time to copy. Some of you are probably thinking, and you're right, that's not necessary because you can just find the pattern. Like I can see that as I go up by 1 unit over here, it's going up by 4 units over here, right? Every time I increase by 1, this increases by 4. So if I decrease by 1 down to 0, I would have to decrease by 4 down to 7. And there's my y-intercept. But not all tables are that easy to look at. That table was easy to do that, but not all of them are, and that's why this method is necessary sometimes. Well, I mean, it just depends. Like, the reason this was so easy is because all the x's jump by ones. That's what made it so easy. So you could see the pattern. Sometimes the first might be a jump of 1, but the second one might be a jump of 3, and so it's harder to tell what the pattern is. And so that's why doing this method is the easiest. Okay, so now let's try this. They want us to write the equation in slope-intercept form from the table. Okay, so first, find the m, the slope. How do we do that? Take 2 points and plug them in the slope formula. which 2 points would you like to use? Okay, so 2, 0, I'll call my x1, y1. And 3, 2, I'll call my x2, y2. Okay, so now that I've named them, I know where to put them in this formula. What goes in the y2 place? So 2 minus 0 over 2 minus 0 equals? No, 2.
Oh my gosh.
3 minus 2 equals 1. So you just found the slope. The slope is 2. You can leave it 2 over 1, but you don't have to. Now I need to find the b, the y-intercept. Well, can I easily find it from the table? Yes, look. When x is 0, that's your y-intercept, -4. But instead of writing the equation y equals 2x plus -4, how should we write it?
Y equals 2x minus 4.
Right. No need to put plus and negative. That simplifies to a minus. Okay, now I would like y'all to try by yourself to write the equation in slope-intercept form for both of these tables. Okay, so take a few minutes. You need to find the m and the b, and then you'll be able to write the entire equation for both. Okay, please try them. Don't just sit there and wait for me to do it, because copying what I do is not learning. Full of values, the first thing you want to find is the slope. Okay, to find the slope, you must use the slope formula. And to use that formula, you obviously need 2 points. An x1, y1, which is 1 point, and an x2, y2, which is another point. You can choose any of the 2 points you want from the table. Which points do you want to use? Okay, so if we use the first 2 points, that's our x1 and our y1, and that's our x2 and our y2. And not that it matters. I mean, you could name those vice versa, and it still would be right. But since that one's on top, it just kind of makes sense to me to name the x1, y1. Now that we've labeled them, we know where to plug them in. What goes in the y2? Over 13 minus 5 is 8. 4 minus 2 is, and 8 over 2 is 4 over 1. But you don't have to write that. You can just write 4x. So we know our mx. Now we need to find our b. Okay? Sometimes the b is visible from the table, but in this one there's no 0 in the x column, so it's not visible. So what you have to do if you can't figure out the pattern is you need to rewrite out y equals mx plus b and plug in what we know. We know now that m equals 4. We don't know b. That's what we're trying to figure out. I know some x and y values. I know 5 x's and 5 y values. So you just pick one of them and plug them in. Which one do you want to plug in? Okay, so if I'm using 2 and 5, 2 is the x, so it goes right there. 5 is the y, so it goes right there. 5 equals what plus b? And now to solve for b, what do I do on both sides? Subtract 8, and so b equals -3, so there's your equation. Now, some of you may have been able to see a pattern. Like I looked at it and saw that as the x's increased by 2, the y's are increasing by 8. So if I decrease down to 0, then I need to decrease by 8, and isn't 5 minus 8 -3? So you could also do it like that, but patterns are not always as easy for everybody. So if you don't know how to do it that way, do it this way. Okay, the next one. First, we need to find the slope using the slope formula. Okay, to use that formula, you have to put in 2 points. Which 2 points do you want it to be? Okay, so that would be x1, y1, and this would be x2, y2. Okay, so what will go in the y2 place? Minus over. Okay, what is -5 minus 4? -9. Do y'all see why I tell you when possible pick positive numbers? Just because you're less likely to make mistakes. But in this case, every set had a negative except for one, so you didn't really have a choice. But type it in. If you type in -5 minus 4, the calculator's not going to go wrong. Okay, what about the denominator? 3 minus 0 is 3, and that reduces to a -3. So your slope's a -3, so we now have half of the equation written. We now have to find the b, but this one's a little bit easier. Why? It's visible. There's your y-intercept right there, 0, 4. So negative 3x plus 4. Okay? Okay, now we're going to skip around a little. I want you to go to page 8 and try those two, 15 and 16. Number 15, our goal is to write the equation in slope-intercept form by just having the table of values. So we obviously need the m. You do that by picking two of the points. I'll just go with the first two. So that would be x1 and y1, and this would be x2 and y2. And not that you have to pick those 2 points. It doesn't matter which ones you pick. Because it's a linear table, you'll get the slope no matter which point you pick. So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. 10 minus 16 is a negative 6. 5 minus 2 is a positive 3. That reduces to a negative 2 over 1, or just negative 2. So there's your slope. Now, if you're not able to look at the table and figure out what's going on, you need to use the method of plugging into the equation. So like, I'm just going to pick a point. I'm going to use a different one than I use for slope. I'm going to use this one. So in the y place, I'll plug in a 6. In the m place, I know it's negative 2. And in the x place, I have to go with 7 since I use 6 for y. Yes, Charlie? Other points. Pay attention, guys, because people are saying they got a different slope. Let's use the bottom 2 points. If this is x1, y1, and this is x2, y2, then that would be a negative 6 minus negative 2. A negative becomes a positive over 13 minus 11. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4. And 13 minus 11 is 2, but negative 4 over 2 is still negative 2. You see now, though? Right, so you see why I always tell you, try to pick the positive whole numbers when you can. Like, don't pick negatives unless that's your only option. Pick the positive numbers. There's less room for error. Okay, shh, I'm trying to teach. Now we're trying to find the b. So what I did is I picked the y value of 6 to go in the y place, the x value of 7 to go in the x place, and then I know my m is negative 2 because I did the slope formula. So that becomes 6 equals negative 14 plus b, and now to isolate the b, what do you have to do to both sides? Right? And so 6 plus 14 is positive 20. Okay, now, you'll also notice, like, look, let me show you how I found the pattern. I noticed that when I went up by 2, the y's went down by 4, right? Okay, as I'm going up by 2 right here, the y went down by 4. So if I go backwards to 0, doesn't that mean I need to go backwards to 20 by 4 units? If that confuses you, you need to master this method of plugging in a y, an x, and an m and solving for b. Okay? Alright, let's try number 16. Can I erase? Y equals mx plus b. Okay, first let's find the m by calculating the slope. Which points would you like to use? Okay, so we use the first two. That's your x1, y1, and this is your x2, y2. So when you plug them in the formula, it'll be what minus what? Right, which becomes what over what? 2 over 3. Okay, now to find the b, you can do the method of plugging in for y, m, and x and solving for b, or you can try to find a pattern. To me, this one was pretty easy to find a pattern, because every single x value is increasing by how many units? 3. And as they do, the y's are doing what? Increasing by 2. So if I want to know what the y was when x was 0, I went down by 3. So the y's would have gone down by 2, which would have made this 0. So it would have been plus 0, which you don't have to write. Okay, now flip all the way back to the page we were on before this. So, page 5. Okay, now we're going to start graphing the lines, which is definitely a review. We did this last semester, probably in December. Okay, remember, all lines are in the form y equals mx plus b. So, is this one in the form y equals mx plus b? So what's the slope of it? Remember, mx plus b. But since we're getting ready to graph it, don't we need a rise over run? So what should we put the 2 over? 1. What's the y-intercept? So to graph it, what do we do first? You always do the y-intercept first. Another name for y-intercept is starting value or initial value, because that's what you start with. You plot it first, and then from there the slope tells you to go. Just think about it. If we went left 1, wouldn't that make the whole line be going down? And it shouldn't be going down because our slope is a positive number. So we go up to right 1. Or we could have gone down to left 1, and that would still be the same line. Okay, so the line is going up because our slope was a positive 2. Okay, I want you to try to graph this one. Y equals negative 2/3 x minus 2. Okay, what is the slope of this line? Negative 2 over 3. Now, the negative is out to the middle. I just chose to put it on the 2. You could have chosen to put it on the 3. One or the other, not both. Because if you put it on both, then what happens? No, if you put a negative on both numbers, what's a negative over negative? A positive. So you would be changing the whole slope. Okay, there's only one negative sign. You can't magically produce 2 negative signs out of that. You just choose which number it goes on. It doesn't matter. What's your y-intercept? Okay, so to graph this line, what do we do first? Right, we plot our y-intercept to negative 2, and then from there we go. Correct. Or say that you had chosen to put the negative on the 3, wouldn't that be up 2, left 3? And that's still in the same line with those points? Why is this line going down? Because it's a negative slope. Why is this line over here steeper than this line? What's the slope of this line? 2. What's the slope of this line? Well, let's just ignore the negative for a second because we know that all it does is makes it go down, right? So we'll just say 2/3. Which number is greater? 2. The greater your slope, the steeper the line. Okay, the bigger your slope number gets, the steeper the line gets. And then, of course, if there's a negative with it, it's still steep, it's just going down. Okay, now what's different about the next one? Right, it is not in slope-intercept form. So, like right now, when you look at it, would you be able to tell me the M and the B? No. I mean, some of you probably could quickly do the work in your head and tell me, but a lot of you can't. So we need to rewrite it. How do we get this into slope-intercept form? First, we need to add the 8, because isn't that 8 the B value? So we're going to add the 8 over, and that gives us 2x plus 8 on the right. So now we have y equals mx plus b, but y is not by itself yet. How do you get that y by itself? Divide everything by 4. So y equals, okay, shouldn't we go ahead and reduce that? 1/2 x. And then what does the b simplify to? A 2. So now that it's in y equals mx plus b form, now you're able to identify the slope and the y-intercept. What's the slope? And what's the y-intercept? What do we do first? Right. Plot our y-intercept at 2, and then from there go. Or we could have gone. Correct. Why is this line going up? Because our slope's positive. Now, out of this one and the last problem we did, this one, which line is steeper? The first one, because think about it. Isn't 2/3 greater than 1/2? Because 2/3 is 0.67. 1/2 is 0.5. Now, it's not a whole lot greater, right? That's not a big difference, That's why it's kind of hard to tell which one's steeper, because this one's barely steeper. 0.67 is not that much bigger than 0.5, but it is a little bigger, so it's a little steeper. Does that make sense? Okay, now turn to page 8, I believe. This is classwork, because we still have 8 minutes, so we're not switching out yet.
Page 8.
Yes. Okay, so listen. On page 8, you'll find 6 problems like we just did that you have to graph. There's only one of them that you have to rewrite first before you can graph it. And then you're also doing page 9, which is 6 more tables to write the equation from. Some of the tables are easy because they give you the y-intercept in it. Some of them are not so easy. So you either have to find the pattern or plug in for m, x, and y to solve for b. Okay, do not just sit there and do nothing. If you don't understand, please come up and ask for help or ask somebody around you, because we have a quiz tomorrow.